We're rolling. And so now we're live here with the 22nd episode of the Athletes Podcast featuring Skylar Grote, the Brock University third-year wrestler. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's you just came off your second consecutive U Sports Championship victory. How does it feel?
It feels good, yeah.
Are you feeling any different now that you've got this second win under your belt going into U.S. national trials?
Yeah, it was a little bit of, some practice for that because I have last chance qualifier next month at the end of the month. So basically I have to take top 2 at last chance and then I'll wrestle 5 days later at Olympic trials. So this was kind of like a stepping stone to getting there.
Where is last chance taking place?
So last chance is in Millersville, Pennsylvania, and then 5 to 6 days later Olympic trials will be at Penn State.
Nice. And how are you feeling going into those? Are you confident for that last chance?
Yeah, I'm confident. I had 2 other qualifiers this year. First was NYAC, and I was a match away from qualifying there. So I took 4th, but I was the second American to place. So there were 2 Canadians that took 1st and 2nd, and then an American took 3rd, and then I took 4th. So I was the second highest placing American, but I needed to win that last chance in order to qualify for Olympic trials, or that last match, sorry. And then I had another qualifier in December, and I had to take top 5 at that. And I was a match away again from qualifying. So now I have this last chance qualifier where I have to take top 2. So I should be, obviously those 2 tournaments I was so close. So I should be 1st or 2nd seed for this last chance qualifier. So
what happened in those other tournaments? Just couldn't get over that last little hump, or what was the...
Yeah, I don't really know. I started both tournaments really strong, and I don't know if it's just the thought of like I need to win this match in order to qualify. Maybe it was just the wrong mindset to have. I don't really know, but hopefully it changes next month.
I'm sure it will.
Yeah.
So you guys just hosted the U Sports National Championships here at Brock, and you talked a bit about that pressure of performing at home. A lot of people don't recognize maybe the amount of pressure that goes on. How did it feel to be able to win gold here, especially with all the other wrestlers that were on your guys' team in front of that Niagara region that represents Brock University so well?
Yeah, it was definitely more pressure, having all your friends and having your family there and just more people that would normally be there puts a little more pressure on you. And I knew that I was like the best in my weight class and that I was capable of winning and that I should win. But should's like almost a bad word to use because like you should win. And I knew that I should win technically, but there's always that doubt that I don't know, maybe I can get thrown or something, and then I end up get pinned in front of like my home crowd. There's like that fear of that, so it definitely did make it a little more difficult, but I was able to pull through and win. So. And
you talk about should winning. You were ranked first throughout almost the entire season leading up to the U Sports Finals, and then a week prior you get bumped down to that 3rd place ranking. What was that about? Was there any reasoning behind that? Give me the back end story.
Yeah, so I was ranked first all year at 67 kilos, and then 2 days prior to this competition, or a couple days maybe, I went into practice and my coach was like, oh, the audacity of them. And I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And then he was like, yeah, they ranked you 3rd. And I didn't know because I'm not obviously looking at the rankings every single day to see where they put me. But yeah, that kind of just sparked a little bit of a fire in me because I knew that I was the best in my weight class and that I shouldn't be ranked 3rd. But I honestly perform better when I'm a little bit of an underdog. So okay. I just looked at it as, an opportunity to prove myself.
Yeah, a little bit pissed off, and you just use that piss and vinegar to make sure you beat the snot out of your team.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of understood why they ranked me 3rd, though, because last year I was ranked 1st, and I lost 1st round by 1 point.
Ooh.
Yeah, to a girl she was good, but I should have won that match, and I lost. So the girl that was ranked ahead of me going into this tournament, she won it last year.
Okay.
So I could she kind of deserves 1st seed if she won last year. So I kind of understood why they did that.
And does the seeding affect, obviously, I'm assuming it affects based on who you compete and you start off the tournament against?
So that was just rankings technically,
Okay.
so it wasn't seeding for the tournament.
Okay.
I think I might have been first seed for the tournament, but
Gotcha.
for U Sport rankings, I was third.
Gotcha. So this isn't also the first time you've been up against some big competition. You were telling us earlier you've been training, or you have trained with some UFC fighters.
I'm just going to interrupt here. So, yeah, you said you trained with Claudia Gadela,
Correct.
who fought, if anyone knows, Joanna Jacek, who was the champion of the women's strawweight division twice. Went to decision both times, and you got to wrestle with this woman.
Yeah, correct.
How was it?
Talk about that.
Yeah, so she came to New Jersey for a brief amount of time, and she came to my club. So she had opened a club close by or something, so she was training in the area, and my coach was like, oh, how would you feel about training with a UFC fighter a couple times? And I was like, yeah, sure, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I looked her up, and I was like, okay, she's pretty good. This is gonna be fun. So I practiced with her probably 2 or 3 times, and she's really strong, and she tested me, and it was cool to practice against another female, because normally at home I'm practicing with all males because there's not many females in New Jersey that wrestle. So it was a great experience for me, and I enjoyed it.
That's super cool.
So what was the kind of distinguishing factors? Obviously, her as a UFC fighter, she's got a plethora of different weapons to use, whether it's BJJ, kickboxing, I don't know what else, other random abilities that they have as fighters. But how was it to be kind of unique in the sense that you're primarily wrestling focused? Was she able to, or did she have different strengths that you had to kind of cater to and make sure that you were avoiding falling into her strengths?
A lot of the time the UFC fighters that I'm wrestling against, they come wrestle with me because they want to work on their wrestling. So they obviously know not to do anything that is not legal in wrestling.
Yeah.
So most of the time we just spend solely wrestling, and a lot of them do train wrestling on a weekly basis. I'd say they do a couple of practices a week. So she knew what wrestling was and the rules of wrestling, so we strictly just wrestled. I never asked them anything to do with MMA because I was just wrestling them.
Yeah.
She, when I wrestled her though, she just had a very solid base. She's hard to move, and she was extremely strong. So I wrestle at 147 point something at 68 kilos.
Okay.
And she fights at 115.
Ooh,
so
damn.
There's a bit of a size difference,
Yeah.
but I was actually very impressed with how strong she was. It's actually incredible.
Yeah, that does. And so she held your own. It was a pretty
Yeah,
even
for
match.
sure. I mean, I know in UFC they cut a lot, so I'm guessing she sits more at 130-ish.
Right.
But yeah, the strength was incredible.
So obviously you have the Olympics representing the U.S., given that you're born and raised in New Jersey. Is that UFC, is mixed martial arts in the cards for you at all after the Olympics, or is that something that you've even thought of or considered yet?
Yeah, so my dad's a doctor.
Ah.
Yeah.
So
and
that probably won't go over
the
well.
one thing he told me was don't get into MMA, but I would be open to it.
Yeah.
Obviously I'm going to do wrestling for the 2024 Olympics and then probably 2028.
Yeah.
But then after that, possibly maybe get into it for a few years. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe if I can be extremely dominant, then I will. But your head's kind of getting banged a lot in that sport, so I don't really know.
Okay, so you brought up your dad. It's a good transition. I saw on Facebook you were posting about the fact that your dad makes his presence known at every wrestling tournament.
Oh yeah.
So obviously coming from New Jersey, how integral is it to have him at those events? How nice of a support network is that?
Yeah, so my dad wrestled for Cornell in Ithaca, New York.
Yeah.
So he was a very accomplished wrestler, and then he went on to be an alternate for the Olympics in '76.
In Montreal.
Yep.
Yeah. With Chris Cotelli.
Yep. So,
Episode 5.
So he was an alternate for the Olympics. So he obviously has been around the sport for a long time, and he loves coming to my competitions and watching me and, supporting me. Obviously, he can't really wrestle anymore, and it, like, kills him. He still tries to get on the mat, and he's 67 years old. So he's able to watch me, and he loves it. So
that's awesome. And is he able to? I'm sure you've got some long car rides with one another, and you're able to share some stories, be able to get some feedback. Is he who got you into it at 8 years old?
Yeah, for sure. So when I was around 5 years old, him and his buddy were wrestling in our living room. And my mom, of course, is yelling at them to not, like, knock over the table and not break anything. But obviously, being guys, they just continued to wrestle in our living room.
Men and testosterone.
Yep. So when I was 5, I saw them, like, doing it, and they were having fun. So I said to my dad, I was like, ooh, like, I want to wrestle. And he was like, oh, you do? You want to wrestle? And at first I was like, okay, yeah, maybe not. But
just lit a fire under him.
Yeah, exactly. But they obviously knew 5 was too young for me to get into a sport like that. They wanted to wait a little bit. So when I was 8, my dad was kind of like, oh, are you still kind of serious about wrestling? Do you want to try it? And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll try it. So I signed up at 8, and that's when I started.
So you wrestle from 8 until, and then you went to a very established high school where it's basically the top boys program, you were saying, in all of the U.S.
Correct.
What was that training like, and did it kind of prepare you for that post-secondary where you were able to, you're fighting against men or guys that are your age and compared to women? How was that as far as preparation?
Yeah, so I wrestled obviously in elementary school and then middle school, and then the time came for high school, and it was between a private school or a public school. And I wanted to go to Blair for the academic aspect of it. And I obviously loved wrestling, and I wanted to continue wrestling, but I didn't know if I could obviously compete with the guys on the team, because I knew the team was the best in the country. And I kind of said to my mom, I was like, I don't really know if I want to wrestle anymore. I don't want to, just kind of like be a burden to the guys. I didn't want to like slow anybody down or any of that. And then, so I was thinking about quitting going into high school because I knew I was going to Blair. And then one of the coaches there, I guess my mom let them know that I was thinking about quitting or whatever. He sat me down for like an hour and was like, hey, we're going to be really accepting of you. Like, you should still wrestle. Don't let, like the fear of the team being really good, like stop you and all of that. And then I was like, okay, I'll try it. I'll give it a try. And then I became a part of the Blair team all 4 years of high school. And yeah, it was awesome. It was a great experience. I had, there's great talent in the room to push me every day. And I was the only girl, but I think that just made me stronger and made me more prepared for wrestling girls in the off season. So
yeah, I feel like that would be, especially if you got a girl who's kicking your ass. Like I'm sure you were doing that at Blair. You had some guys who had to make sure they were on their A game so that they weren't getting chirped afterwards. Right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So you did your 4 years at Blair, and then you went and spent 1 year down in the NCAA, or was that JUCO? What was that university college that you were at?
It was Lafayette College,
yeah.
So it is a part of the NCAA. Okay. But because I went to Blair and it's a great academic school, all my friends were going to really good academic colleges, and I didn't want to go to a school in the States that had women's wrestling because at the time the schools weren't very good academically, and they're like in the middle of nowhere. I think the closest one was 12 hours away. So I feel
like you're a homebody.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. But I just couldn't see myself where those schools were. They were like in Kentucky and Tennessee, and it just wasn't the place for me.
Right.
So I told my parents, like, I don't know what to do. Maybe I can go to Lafayette, and then it's pretty close to home. It was like 45 minutes away. I was like, maybe I can just go there and then still wrestle with my club because I have a great coach at my club.
Gotcha.
So I was like, maybe we can just do that and I can still wrestle. So I went to Lafayette, and 4 days a week I drove from school to club and then back, which was an hour away. So it was like 4 hours of my time, 4 days a week. Jeez. And then I was wrestling with the boys club team a little bit. But I realized that I needed a team.
Right.
That if I wanted to go to the Olympics one day, I needed females that were going to push me, because that's who I was wrestling post high school. I was wrestling females.
Right.
And I just didn't have that at Lafayette, so I had to figure something else out.
And then figuring something else out meant looking up north past the 49th parallel to Brock and Guelph, I believe you mentioned.
Yeah, so one of my dad's friends had suggested to him, maybe she should go look in Canada. I know there's a couple good wrestling schools in Canada. Maybe bring her there and see if that's a better fit for her. So I went to Guelph first, and I checked out Guelph, and I liked it. But there's just like something missing for me. And then 2 days later, I came to Brock, and I practiced with the Brock team. And I just like knew that this was the place I needed to be. If I wanted to go to the Olympics, if I wanted to make world teams, I needed to be in that room.
And you talked about competing against other women who were going to be pushing you. Talk a bit about that Brock team and the camaraderie you guys have together. You guys have names like Jess Briette, Hannah Taylor, who's your best friend you've talked about. What is that, having those women around you, supporting you, pushing you, how much does that benefit you long term?
Yeah, so we have a lot of world medalists in our room, and a couple of people that are currently on the Olympic team, and a whole bunch of world team members and all of that. So just having those people around you and people with the same goals as you, I don't think I could get there, and I don't think I could get that anywhere else. So it's nice to have people constantly pushing you and people that expect more of you.
Mm-hmm. That Brock University wrestling program is so dominant. It is ridiculous. I think it's 7 years in a row you guys have won both U Sports for men's and women's, and it's like 20 out of the last 25 or something crazy. Mm-hmm. Marty Calder's just got such a dominant program established. How does he compared to some other coaches that you have, and where does he get that next level from his athletes?
So Marty went to the Olympics as well. I haven't had a coach that went to the Olympics before, so he kind of brings a new thing to the table for me. It's just, since I want to go to the Olympics one day, I kind of get I'm able to see what it takes in him to get there. Mm-hmm. So he has like a specific mindset. He's like super competitive all the time, and everything he does, like he wants to win everything he does, even if it's just like a little game that we play before practice. He's so competitive that he wants to win. And that kind of helps me, because it teaches me like I need to be competitive in everything I do, and I need to win or try to win every single thing I put myself into.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I've learned that from him, to just do my best and give 110% all the time. Are
you not naturally a super competitive individual?
I think that I am super competitive, but there was a time where I kind of backed away from that. Growing up when I was little, I always wanted to be the best, and I was super competitive, but then sometimes being too competitive, you can start like fights with people, and then I was, fighting with people over stupid stuff. So then I was like, I'm going to try not to be so competitive. But then I realized at my time at Brock that if you want to be like an Olympian, you need to be competitive. There's no like, letting somebody get a move or letting somebody take you down or all that stuff. You have to fight for every position, and you have to fight for everything.
And so how does it's interesting the fact that you come from down in the States and you end up in Canada. It's very unique for an athlete to go from down south and come up north. Usually at 99.9% of the time, it's athletes from Canada coming down and then going down to the NCAA. Was there some question marks around that decision when you made it? Were there people questioning, why are you doing this? What's the reasoning behind it?
Yeah, I think a lot of people were wondering why I wasn't going to a program in the States, and that there were women's programs in the States, and they were confused kind of why I was going to Canada. But I knew that with the coaching staff at Brock, if I wanted to be the best I could possibly be, I needed to be in that room. I knew that the coaches would push me to be my best. And I'm sure that other schools in the States have that coaching structure, but I just preferred Brock at the time.
Yeah, it makes sense. Brock's got just such a dominant structure and praise.
So, when it comes to practicing and wrestling, just because it's a different sport compared to, let's say, hockey, where you can go 100% in practice because your goal is to put a puck in the net. Because in practice you're practicing wrestling with your other teammates, I know you want to go super intense, but obviously there's a chance that people can get hurt too, right? Mm-hmm. So can you just talk about, like, when it comes to practicing, how, like, the mentality, the respect, and how everything goes there?
Yeah, I think that you're going to know whether you're hurting someone in practice or not. I mean, when you go live and stuff, obviously you're giving 110%, but obviously I know I'm going to hurt my teammate if I whack them in the head or whatever, but I can't do that in a match anyway.
Yeah.
So I think you just have to kind of control your emotions and know that they are your teammates, and be careful about putting somebody in a bad position, especially if someone's hurt.
Right.
Usually your teammate will tell you beforehand, like, hey, my ankle's bothering me or something. Can you just not do this move? And then you just have to, like, respect that. And that happens a lot in our room because obviously with wrestling, there's lots of injuries.
Yeah.
So you have to say to your practice partner, like, hey, be careful because, that hurts me today. So, yeah, for sure.
When you got a guy like Clayton Pye who comes back from getting stabbed, he's got broken collarbones, his shoulders falling out, like, tell me a bit about it. Have you had some interactions with Clay? What's he like as an individual? Because he's kind of on the same path as far as he's got Olympic trials in a month too. Him and Ligrid as well. They're both going for it. What are those guys like?
So I actually have lived with both. So
no,
yeah.
Do all wrestlers just live with each other?
So I'm basically in a wrestler's house. But Clayton I lived with last year and the year before, and then Ligrid I have lived with the past 3 years.
Okay.
So yeah, they're both extremely motivated, and it's great to be surrounded by them even at home because we all have the similar goals and stuff, and they're just really tough people. And yeah,
I'm sure that those wrestling houses then have very, very clean fridges that are filled with super healthy food. You talked a bit on the Niagara Sports Report with Rod Mahood about how your nutrition, you kind of started taking that seriously 3 or 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. Take us through, tell the listeners what your diet looks like, what you're aiming for as far as your daily and weekly goals.
Yeah, so diet's a big thing for me because I kind of struggle with my weight. My weight's kind of all over the place. So I really had to crack down on my nutrition, and because I wrestle 68 kilos, and sometimes I can get up to like 72, 73, and that's even me watching my weight.
Really?
So I don't really know how big I would get if I just like through
Let
my
loose.
diet. Oh yeah, I don't really know. I mean, I was sitting at like 68 kilos, and then I took a 3-week break from my diet, and I was up at like 73. So, oh yeah. So
Is there ever an opportunity to let loose as a wrestler? I feel like you guys are always training for the next event. Like, you don't really ever get breaks, do you guys?
Yeah, once in a while we do, but yeah. So I constantly, obviously, have to be on my diet and make sure I usually like to sit at like 69, 70 kilos, just two kilos over my weight class. So that requires me to be super strict, which means like no going out to eat really. I probably go out to eat once every 2 to 3 months. Oh yeah.
Damn, that's different from Jordan and I's weekly 905 eats run.
Yeah, and then every like body is different. So me personally, like I can't really eat a high calorie diet because I'll just put on weight like crazy. Even though I'm working out 3 to 4 hours a day, I'm only eating like 1,500 calories, which is like, to somebody else, people would say, oh, that's way too little or whatever. But if I eat more than that, I'm going to gain weight. So
really?
Yeah. So it's just everybody's body's different. And
yeah.
You just have to figure out what works for you.
It's a good point. Like, so Jordan and I started this fitness challenge. We started working with Nathan Jackson, who came on the pod, and I've been giving Jordan shit because he hasn't been eating enough.
I did around 1,500 calories.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. He claims to be maintaining, but clearly he's just not working hard enough in the gym.
Oh, there
but it is interesting. So, like, we started 3 weeks ago now. And he's got me eating a whack load of protein, way more than I've actually ever been eating before. And it's really interesting once you start counting your calories, how hard it is to get that many calories in when you're eating healthy too.
Yeah,
a lot of
for
people
sure.
don't realize.
It's actually a lot of food.
Right? Like you're
Oh,
crushing
yeah.
salads. You're like, Rig, man,
Yeah.
I'm only at 1,200 and I've eaten.
Yeah, like I had a friend once a couple days ago with eating healthy and how much food you have to eat. He told me, just like, dude, I had all that in one McDonald's meal. I'm like, well, that's just completely different ingredients, and it's super easy to go over calories when it's stuff like that. But when you're changing your eating habits, it's tough.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got, is there help and support from the university then, in the sense of giving you some diet tips, nutrition tips, that kind of stuff?
I feel like I have focused on my nutrition for so long that I just know that
You're
when
dialed in.
Oh yeah, and when someone like suggests something to me, it's not something I haven't heard or tried before. So
Interesting.
yeah, and my dad's a doctor, so obviously I have that resource too.
Okay, so tell me more about this. I feel like he's got you dialed in then, and you've got any questions you have, you just go to dad and he's got you covered.
Yeah, basically. I mean, he is a doctor, so it's any nutrition questions I have or any injury questions I have, he's my resource.
Right. So what's the future look like? We've talked about the fact that you've got last chance in about a month, and then those US trials. You know, whether or not you make it for the 2021 Olympic Games that may actually be canceled.
2020.
2020.
Yeah.
I always say that was canceled.
I know. I did see that article though, that the coronavirus or
right.
Yeah.
And who was it? What's that guy's name that was talking about? There's like a 2 or 3 month window now that.
Yeah, I heard that too.
If it falls one way or another, sorry, I actually haven't read it, but that it could cancel the entire Olympic Games.
Yeah.
Which would be crazy.
I'm assuming it's too late to actually find a different destination then for it too, right? Like it's canceled if
well, I think it's just because of how many people are coming from all over from every continent.
It's a big event.
Yeah, and that's one way to really spread something, is if you got people from everywhere coming to one location, boom, and then it goes all the way back too.
Yeah.
So man, I'm really hoping that doesn't happen.
Same.
For your sake, for all the other athletes, because that's one of the things that gets lost with Olympics, is the fact that because it only happens every 4 years, you only have a short window where you can capitalize on that, right? Like you said, 2024 and 2028 likely are your 2 big years. You said one wrestler in your weight class that's the top in the world in the US. Where else is the US just that much more dominant compared to every other country?
Well, with women's wrestling specifically, I don't think there's much of a difference between the top women in Canada and the top women in the States. They're pretty similar, but I would say that the quantity of girls is way different. So because Canada is 1/10 of the population of the US, you obviously don't have as many women wrestlers competing for an Olympic spot. So at my one qualifier, I had 34 girls in my weight class. And I had to take top 5 there to qualify, and I ended up taking 7th. So that one match that I lost, I wasn't able to qualify. But 34 girls in my weight class, and then at the Olympic trials, at my weight in Canada, there were only 6. So at just a qualifying tournament to get me to Olympic trials, there's 34 girls. And then in Canada, there's only 6 at their Olympic trials. And anybody's allowed to enter.
So, are you one of the younger participants, I'm assuming, based in that American field? Or are there a lot of gals?
So in the top 6 girls at my weight class, 5 of the 6 are older than me.
Okay.
So there's only one girl that's younger than me in the
Right.
top 6. But yeah, I probably am one of the younger ones for sure. I mean, I'm only 22, so I know that the number 1 at my weight, she's 27, and then the number 2 at my weight, she's around 25. So
gotcha. So you got to end up, if Canada's got a slightly smaller field, you got to end up finding a guy up here, get a dual citizenship.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, my plan is to go back to the States in a couple years anyway. So, but that's a possibility. If I decide to stay in Canada, then I would think about competing for Canada for sure. But just because the quantity is lower, I wouldn't say the quality is lower. Like out of those 6 girls at my weight class at Olympic trials, the quality of them was crazy. I mean, I have Olivia DeBacchio, who I wrestle with every single day, and she took 5th in the Worlds. And so I'm training with her every day. And then she ended up taking second at Olympic trials, and Danielle LePage won Olympic trials, and she's a world silver medalist and a junior, I want to say a junior world champ or bronze or something. So obviously the quality is crazy.
Well, you're surrounding yourself with these people at least. So that's, obviously a lot of people have said that it's, who you surround yourself with is what you become. Mm-hmm. And obviously you're doing that. So kudos to you for sticking with, because I'm sure it could probably be frustrating at times too when you're competing with these people. You see them all the time training with them, and then you got to go up against them. And, it's difficult, especially when you've got these older women who are probably beating down on you. And it can be frustrating, and you kind of feel like it's a never-ending process, but in the long run, you'll benefit, right?
Yeah, it's humbling. I mean, I have Olivia and all those people in the room to beat up on me every day. And sometimes I have to remind myself at the end of the day, like, I'm only 22 and, they're older. They're 27, 28, even 30. I mean, we have a 34-year-old in the room. So I'm like, wow, 34. Like, I have 12 more years of this if I want to. Like, the amount I can grow in that amount of time is crazy. So sometimes you just have to, like, take a step back and, like, look at how far you've come.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of in life, people don't do that enough also. I think that athletics especially, and people, athletes are always pushing, and basically every sport now, athletes are getting younger and younger because people are specializing so much faster. And obviously you are among the many at Brock. I've got like Julie Steffler, Hannah Taylor, Ligrit, Clayton, Cruz Manning, Shauna Kubek, yourself were the gold medal winners from Brock alone. Mm-hmm. And then there was a bunch of others who were sitting on the podium. We'd be here all day if I read all the names off. But that you guys just have such a level of dominance. Do the other university? It was actually crazy. I was at that U Sports final, and it seemed like Brock wasn't even the home team half the time, because every other group, every other school, was cheering against you guys because you've been so dominant for so long.
Yeah, for sure.
And how is that mentally, being in your hometown and having every other school just on your back giving it to you?
Yeah, I actually like it because I'm like, they just don't like us because we're good.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it's come to. And, my teammates have always told me that people are against us because we are good, and I didn't really believe it. But then the last couple of years, I've obviously seen it firsthand. I'm like, wow, people really just don't like us because we're good. There's actually one photo. Julie won a huge weight class. She had two really good girls in her weight class, and she actually got OW for the tournament. But there's a picture of her winning, and someone in the crowd is giving her a thumbs down.
No
and
way.
It's caught on camera of this girl like booing Julie for winning. So it's funny, It's like, it's sad that people can't be happy for a team for being so dominant, and that they have to like try to bring you down. But yeah. It's the second or third time I've been to the wrestling. There was the OUAs you mentioned a couple of years ago that Brock hosted, but I just went in and tried to find a seat and sat in front of a woman who was slightly distressed. I was like, is everything all right? She's like, yeah, my son's about to go on next. So that next match, it was the finals. He was in the 54 kilos, I believe. I believe his name was Logan Snow. I can't remember. Anyway, from University of Saskatchewan, I believe. Okay.
And I've never seen someone with such an array of emotions coming from this woman. She's obviously a very dedicated mother, but her son ended up winning, long story short, and immediately after winning the match, ran up right behind me, bumped into four other people, and just burst into tears with him and his mother.
No.
And I had never actually seen that kind of emotion right after a match. Obviously, playing hockey and golf growing up, they're kind of subdued emotions until afterwards. But that was probably one of the coolest experiences I've ever seen, as far as being able to share that with your mother. I'm sure it's similar relationship with your dad. How do you contain that emotion going through these tournaments, because you're competing all of the time? How are you able to keep that in check?
Yeah, so I feel like there's a lot more emotion with wrestling because it is an individual sport. So at the end of the day, you don't have a team to blame or any of that. So it's literally a showcase of your hard work. Mm-hmm. So a lot of whether you perform well or you don't perform well is all in your control. So I think that brings a whole new level of emotion to it. But it's also hard to balance emotions when you have your own and then you have your spectators' emotions and your parents' emotions. So me personally, my dad gets super nervous before I wrestle. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I can feel that energy. And sometimes I'm like super calm and then he's super nervous. And I'm like, oh my gosh, should I be nervous? Because he's really nervous. Like, why is he so nervous? So it's hard to, balance that. But you kind of have to like block everybody else out and just focus on yourself. And so.
It's, I'm sure it's a very difficult thing to manage on top of the fact that you've got to go against another human being who's trying to beat you ultimately, mm-hmm. right? And it's, it can be an intimidating, sport, I'm sure, at times. Okay, last couple questions. You said you guys are training 3 or 4 hours a day. Take us through the typical Skylar Grote training day.
Oh gosh, okay. So on Mondays, I wake up around 7 and I have lift from 8 to 9. And then from 9 to 10, I'm doing morning technique. And then I'll go to class during the day on Monday. And then I have practice 4 to 6. And that's what my Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays look like, basically. And then on Wednesdays, I have practice at 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. And then on Fridays, I get the day off, but I don't actually take the day off. I usually do a cardio session on my own, like 45 minutes to an hour.
Just because, got to get it in. Right?
Got to get another one in.
Yeah.
And then Saturdays, we have like match day. So basically, we simulate what a tournament would be. Okay. So we go in, we warm up, and then we get in like 4 matches. And then Sunday, we're obviously off. But I'm training. I have 12 workouts a week, and so I don't even really know how long I'm, working out or whatever. I don't even count because it scares me.
Never stops.
Yeah.
Here, Jordan was chirping me for going to yoga 7 days a week. Fucking guy.
That's nothing.
I know, right?
Yoga's actually hard though.
So I started this 1 month trial at Moto St. Catharines down the street, and today was day 10, and I feel so good. It's incredible. I don't know what kind of recovery methods you guys use. I'm sure you're stretching all the time, but I never stretched prior to this, and I'm seeing some crazy results as far as just feeling stronger in those maybe less agile positions. I don't know I can't remember the word. Anyway, feeling some amazing results. So I'm sure you guys incorporate a whole wide array of different exercises. I know you guys are constantly doing gymnastics and all that different kind of stuff. How do you balance, you don't want to necessarily just be in the gym 24/7 pounding weights, right? You got to be cardio strong at times. You got to be flexible. You got to be mobile, agile. What is your training? Has it changed since coming to Brock?
I think that everybody has their own recipe for what works best for them. For me, strength is a big thing. I'm able to overpower a lot of my opponents based off of my strength. So I like to focus on my strengths. I like to work on my weaknesses, but I think that a part in wrestling is really working on your strengths too, to just be that much better. Mm-hmm. I definitely like to lift, and I take lifting seriously. But there's other things that help you too. Like you said, we did gymnastics, and I wasn't really open to gymnastics at first because I'm like, I'm not flexible. I'm not good at that kind of stuff. It just makes me feel shitty about myself. Yeah. Because I just don't have the body for that sport. But then I realized that it's good to be open to new stuff and, to try to do something different. It's really good to diversify your workouts. So now I've been working on diversifying my workouts. I used to just strictly run because I'm like, running is what works best for me. It gets my weight down. It helps with my cardio. But lately I'm like, all right, I'm going to do something different. So I've been biking a little bit more, getting in the pool a little bit. So
the pool is great too. Swimming's unbelievable. I'm the exact same way in the sense that I when someone asked me to try and touch my toes, I kind of laughed at first, but now that we're a week and a half in, feeling good, flexible. So I'm glad to hear you were open-minded to the gymnastics too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I won't be doing gymnastics anytime soon, but I'm working there slowly but surely. One of the last questions we always try and ask is what your thoughts as far as what creates kind of the best athlete, or what the best qualities are for athletes. Do you have any tips, tricks, suggestions as far as what you would recommend for athletes who are maybe younger, coming up through the ranks, and maybe need some more advice from a two-time youth sports champion and potential future Olympian?
Yeah, for sure. I think that an important part of being the best you can be, the best athlete you can be, is obviously surrounding yourself with people that have the same goals. I think another important thing to have is holding yourself accountable to be the best that you can be. I know that I work really hard, but there's always this voice in the back of my head that tells me that I can work harder. Even if I'm giving all I can, this little voice is telling me, no, you can do more, you can work harder, or there's someone else working harder than you. And just kind of having that mindset that, yeah, like too much can be detrimental, but keeping a balance and always striving to be better is also important. So those are two things I would definitely suggest.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate you coming on, Skylar, to the Athletes Podcast for our 22nd episode. Thank you guys for tuning in and listening to this episode. Hopefully it's given some young wrestlers, some female wrestlers, some insight into the life of a 22-year-old future, hopefully world champion, Olympian, two-time youth sports champion. That's confirmed. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you in 2020 as well as 2024 and 2028. We'll get you on a couple more times between then.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, listeners.